Humans are social animals. We're hardwired for connections. And when we don't get the connections with others that we need, we start to feel a type of pain, and it's one that's still a bit difficult to talk about. Those struggling with loneliness often describe it as a black cloud, an ache or an anguish, or a feeling of worthlessness. This is Sue. She struggles with chronic loneliness and has agreed to share her story. She lives alone in a home in Sydney Southwest and says she rarely speaks to anyone. Sadly, stories like Sue's are not unique. Australians are experiencing loneliness in record numbers, and the pandemic only made things worse. The health effects of loneliness are alarming. It's strongly linked to anxiety and depression, and it has a terrible impact on our physical health as well. Estimates put the cost of loneliness in the billions of dollars a year, but I think we can agree that the issue goes beyond just numbers and figures. It's a crisis that will likely get worse. Living alone is a huge risk factor for loneliness, and lone person households will continue to rise. Over half of Sydney's 420,000 lone person households are over the age of 60, so our older residents are particularly at risk. But there's another fundamental need that record numbers are struggling with. SGS's recent rental index showed affordability has tumbled. Harvey, pictured here, it's not a stock image, he's a real person. He had to move back to Nowra because he just couldn't afford to live in Sydney. And he says this has limited his social circles and his job opportunities. Right now, there's thousands in overcrowded share houses. Teachers and nurses can't afford to live where they're needed. Couples are delaying having children because they don't have suitable or stable housing. And my surfer friends can't even afford to live near the beach, so they're quite unhappy about that as well. So loneliness and the rental crisis are both driven by a complex web of factors, and at face value, they seem like two distinct, separate issues. But we actually see them as having a common thread, and it's one that hints at a solution. Now, one census number really stuck out for us. There are 13 million empty rooms across occupied dwellings in Australia, 13 million, and 2 million of those are in Greater Sydney. We see these empty rooms as bridging the two issues. In Sue's case, the empty rooms in her house are inextricably linked with her loneliness. Many older Australians can now afford to age in spacious homes, but for some, a byproduct can be isolation and loneliness. In Harvey's case, the empty rooms limit his options and put upward pressure on rents, particularly in sought-after areas in Sydney, close to jobs, education and transport. Now, we decided to map Sydney's 2 million empty rooms, and this is what we found. There are 500,000 just within a kilometre of our rail stations, 500,000. And see these big blue dots here? There are 20,000 just within a K of King's Cross, Edgecliff and Bondi Junction stations.
So, generally the response to the housing affordability crisis has been to build more and encourage older people to downsize. While this is definitely part of the solution, additional housing stock takes time and costs are escalating. In addition, not all older people want to move out of their homes and their communities. With 13 million empty idle rooms, 2 million of which are in Greater Sydney, we argue that much of the housing stock is already available. So how do we activate these empty rooms? Our big idea is to match older people that have a spare room with younger people that are searching for more affordable rental opportunities. And how do we propose to do this? Via the internet. So how will it work? We're proposing an online interactive platform. Think Airbnb comes Tinder with a mix of flatmate finder. Both parties will advertise what they're looking for, the location, prices, and interests. Now, we know that digital literacy can be a barrier for some, so for those that need additional assistance, they can access the support service. The rents would be set at a below market rate, therefore more affordable for young people, as well as help drive down the rental costs. In exchange for cheaper rent, the young person would undertake basic chores such as cooking, cleaning, and driving them to the store. We note there are similar smaller scale programs already happening across the globe. We want to take what is already happening at a smaller scale and take it to a broader scale. We already know that these are having great benefits for both younger people and older people. Given an example of this is Floss and Snowy. Floss lived with Snowy for 3.5 years for $50 a week rent. Floss notes that not only do they build a beautiful friendship, but Snowy helped her when she was a financially struggling student, and she helped Snowy. We want to take what is already happening at a smaller scale and take it to a larger scale, making more stories like Floss and Snowy. In order for this to work, government needs to provide oversight, regulation and compliance. Both young people and older people are potentially vulnerable community members. If left to the private market, governments will be left running to catch up with regulation. So we see this as one solution amongst a multi-pronged approach required to address the rapidly growing social isolation and housing affordability crisis. Our population is going to continue to age, and if we don't act soon, our most vulnerable, older people and younger people, will continue to be isolated. Now, we're throwing a lot of stats at you today, but the key message here is that there are 1.2 million people currently experiencing social isolation in New South Wales. There's a rapidly increasing rental affordability crisis, and there are 2 million empty rooms available in Greater Sydney. If only 5% of older people joined this program, it would result in approximately 50,000 additional rooms, reduced rent, and the opportunity for older people to stay at home longer. We need to start connecting housemates across generations.